Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. The Legend of the Pirate King Starry. This is a novel written to commemorate the beautiful memories that One Piece once brought to me. It focuses on passion, adventure, humor, and a more dreamy and beautiful love story. This book is written in memory of One Piece, so both the plot and the style of the book will maximize the restoration of the original features. The protagonist's strength gradually strengthens with adventure, and the devil fruit ability is relatively complex and special. Under the gaze of those blood moon red pupils, all sins will emerge one by one. Even the so-called gods, when judged, what is the difference between their humble posture and that of mortals? This book is updated every day with 5,000 to 10,000 words, depending on the situation. Finally, I wish everyone a pleasant reading. Interested +sign. 3.35.6, 335.43.6 Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Introduction to the main character's abilities, incomplete. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jeong, after being asked by a book friend, I have been wanting to introduce the main character's abilities. Taking advantage of the holiday, I will first do some work basic information of the protagonist gender. Male height. Unknown weight. Unknown birthday. Unknown body odor. Due to frequent fishing trips, the body has a refreshing sea breeze scent. Favorite food. Basically not picky about eating, unless it's too unpleasant. At present, the protagonist's brief summary, provided by a silent book friend. Time travel, growing fruit, boarding the ship, dreaming of finding all the precious beasts in the world, losing memories of past sea pirates, possessing unique weapons, being foolish, suffering multiple injuries, being a miracle creator, a chin terminator, nicknamed Guetong, sun monkey, fake, supreme treasure, fake, and harem romance emotional intelligence. Confirmed relationship with girl. Nami Little Loli's brother. Miss Golden Week excited to jump into the sea after being publicly confessed. Vivi on the night of our first meeting, we vomited 6 times in a row. Robin make an agreement with another Little Loli to fight again in 10 years. Elsa the protagonist's ability is called the Fruit of Growth, which has other names. Simply put, the protagonist's ability is easy to understand, as they can see through the other person's growth. The protagonist can instantly learn the other person's physical skills with this move, deprive them of their growth experience, and also exchange their growth experience, such as transforming the growth experience of an animal into a person, making it impossible for them to even become a human. The above main abilities must have the ability to absolutely suppress the opponent, otherwise they are invalid. Currently only one special situation appears in the entire text. The stripes on the protagonist's body are actually like candles secreted by Mr. 3 and venom secreted by Magellan. The initial stripes are red, green, and orange. The characteristic of activating the demon fruit ability is that the pupils of both eyes will turn into the most basic blood red color, and the color of the pupils will also change with the use of different demon fruit abilities. When angry, the pupils will automatically transform into blood pupils, red eye form. A sign of using the demon fruit ability, which can enhance one's own strength to a certain extent. The color of the stripes changes to green. It can enhance the activity of its own cells and have stronger recovery and immune abilities than usual in a short period of time. The stripe color changes to orange. It can strip the target of growth in an instant and simulate a special virtual growth environment, making the animal recognize it as the main focus. This move is only effective on animals, supersensory form. A new ability developed by the devil fruit after undergoing a mutation. The whole body is covered by green stripes condensed into green armor, which not only strengthens the sensory nerves in the body, but also has tens of millions of simulated sensory nerves inside the green armor, which can greatly improve perceptual ability. Flame form. A new ability developed by the devil fruit after undergoing a mutation. The whole body is covered with orange golden armor condensed from orange stripes, which has extremely high flame resistance. The body can ignite terrifying high-temperature flames, and the flames produced can also burn in nitrogen dioxide, allowing oneself to enter an anaerobic breathing state. The breathing rate is thousands of times higher than usual, and high-concentration alcohol catalytic flames can also be generated on the orange-golden armor. Ability to alienate weapons. A new ability developed by Devil Fruit after undergoing mutations. The stripes on the body attached to the weapon can change the molecular arrangement characteristics of the object to a certain extent, thereby transforming its form and strengthening the weapon. Well, the basic idea is that we can provide a more detailed introduction after the completion of the Judicial Islands section Feilu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good. Sorry, it's even worse tonight. Don't wait, everyone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tomorrow, I will make up for what I owe tonight. Feilu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good. Happy Mother's Day. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sorry, today is Mother's Day and the whole family went out for a dinner. It's already this time when we get back, and it's even better tomorrow. 3 things to do when reading. Read, collect, and reward. Sorry, I'm fixing a chapter tonight. Don't wait for updates, everyone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A bunch of chapters in the background have been harmonized, busy with editing but not writing. I won't update them tonight and try to finish them as early as possible tomorrow. 3 things to do when reading. Read, collect, and reward. Sorry, everyone, don't wait for updates tonight. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Sorry, the car broke down on the way and encountered a heavy rain day. After all this fuss, it's already this time to come back. I won't make any changes tonight, so I'll try to finish it as early as possible tomorrow. Feilu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good. Chapter 1. Meeting of Fate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Qin Ming, wake up quickly. Didn't you agree to go fishing with us today? Are you trying to be lazy again? A fat man kept tapping on Qin Ming's door, making a loud thud. Fatty guy, don't knock anymore, you're going to smash the door. Lying in bed, Qin Ming lifted the blanket and quickly got out of bed, sighing lightly. He had been in this world for over half a year. From initial resistance to current helplessness, Qin Ming felt very confused about his future. At first, when Qin Ming heard the children in this village talking about the Pirate King Gold Roger, he thought it was just a dream, or were all the people here pirate fans. Otherwise, when those children talk about the Pirate King, their innocent eyes are filled with a look of obsession and worship, and there is a faint hint of madness, like a crazy believer, which makes Qin Ming feel palpitated. From the fisherman who rescued him, Qin Ming learned that he was drifting alone at sea and had fallen into a coma. If it weren't for being discovered by fishermen who happened to be fishing nearby, he would have really been buried in the sea. Since then, Qin Ming has learned to be a fisherman in order to survive, constantly practicing his fishing skills. 6 months later, he has become a famous fisherman in this fishing and hunting village. Many people invite Qin Ming to go fishing together before going out to sea, so that they can catch more fish. At first, Qin Ming thought of growing some plants and vegetables in this village, becoming a leisurely vegetable farmer. He just lived his life like this. However, the land in the village was extremely poor, not to mention growing vegetables, and not a single blade of grass could survive. Therefore, the people in the village relied on fishing for a living. During this 6-month period, Qin Ming had fish in his meals, but he didn't have much aversion. Because the fish species in the nearby sea area are extremely abundant, the fish he eats every day, and even every meal, each one is different and has a different taste, which can be said to be a feast. After all, when we were on Earth in the past, we couldn't say there were too few fish species, but in this world of the One Piece, there are many fish that cannot be eaten on Earth. For example, the snowflake fish that Qin Ming ate the day before yesterday, even after steaming it, was still cold. No matter how hot it was as cold as an popsicle, with soft, fragrant, smooth, and spineless flesh. Eating this fish on this scorching summer day was simply exhilarating. It's really unlucky. After reading that novel, the protagonist gained various powerful abilities after traveling. Why am I still an ordinary person? Qin Ming thought indignantly as he followed the fat man towards the seaside. Along the way, many villagers greeted Qin Ming kindly and saw many children playing the game of catching pirates in the navy. Today it's my turn to play the role of the great pirate with a white beard. You can play the role of a naval lieutenant and come and catch me. Fool, Whitebeard is a super great pirate known as the world's strongest man. How could a small naval lieutenant dare to catch Whitebeard, at least at the level of a general? Upon hearing the children's conversation, the chubby man next to Qin Ming suddenly exclaimed with emotion, "It's so nice to be young. I used to dream of becoming a famous pirate like them, finding the legendary One Piece and becoming the Pirate King. But in the end, I gave up." Seeing the chubby man's expression of disinterest on his face, Qin Ming secretly thought to himself, what about the Pirate King? With your level, you probably didn't enter the Great Passage before being killed by pirates like the clown Bucky. Do you know why I have to give up? The fat man asked Qin Ming. Why? When Qin Ming asked, the chubby man looked sorrowful and said, "Back then, I set out to sea ambitiously, but before I could have sailed far, I was capsized by a large sea king. If it weren't for being saved at that time, how could I have survived?" Upon hearing what the fat man said, Qin Ming felt very embarrassed. He actually forgot that in the waters of this world, large sea kings can be said to be everywhere. With the level of the fat man, he really doesn't need to encounter other pirates, and a sea king can easily defeat him. Who saved you? No one in our village can deal with large sea kings yet, right? Qin Ming felt a bit strange as to who saved this chubby guy. I don't know, he's a very strange old man. According to him, he happened to swim nearby and saved me by the way. Although I think what he said was a bit boastful about how a person could swim from one island to the next, he's really strong. He threw a small stone and knocked out that huge sea king. The fat man's words made Qin Ming suddenly confused. Could it be that the one who saved the fat man at that time was the underworld king Lei Li? Does the old man you're talking about have a scar on his right eye? Qin Ming asked urgently. Ah, that's right, how do you know? The fat man looked at Qin Ming in surprise. I'll just guess casually. Qin Ming wondered why Raleigh came to the East China Sea. According to the fat man, he was saved by Raleigh a year ago. How could Raleigh appear in this supposedly weakest sea area at that time? According to the population in the village, it has been 22 years since the death of Pirate King Gold Roger, which means that Luffy should have gone to sea now. But why did Raleigh come to the East China Sea for over a year? Qin Ming, as a pirate fan before, had also watched the Pirate King many times. I really don't remember the plot inside that said Raleigh had come to the East China Sea the year before Luffy set sail. Is this also Oda's foreshadowing? An absurd idea came to Qin Ming's mind. Hey, what are you fooling around about? You're ready to go fishing at sea. After the fat man boarded the fishing boat, he couldn't help but shout out when he saw Qin Ming still standing there, unsure of what he was thinking. Qin Ming regained his senses and hurriedly boarded the fishing boat, starting his busy and fulfilling fishing life once again. More than 2 hours later, Qin Ming and the fat man watched with satisfaction as they saw today's harvest. 10 baskets of fish were full, enough to eat for a while. Both of them were very happy in their hearts and were about to return when a huge wave rose on the sea, almost overturning their small fishing boat. Not good, it's a sea king. The fat man looked at the giant creature emerging from the sea with a frightened expression, almost peeing in his pants. Crouching trough, is this the true sea king class? Qin Ming looked up at the creature with a horse-like face, eyes like lanterns, but a body like an octopus. Judging from its size, it looked like a small concave convex man, at least 20 times larger than the small fishing boat he was riding on. There shouldn't be any sea kings in the nearby waters, why does it appear here? The fat man asked Qin Ming with a panicked expression on his face. At this point, why don't you ask the fart? Hurry up and row a boat to escape. Qin Ming didn't care about being drenched in the splashing seawater, so he quickly found the oars and started rowing desperately. At this moment, Qin Ming misses the motorboats on Earth in the past. How could they have been so tough now? Even if they rowed, they would almost cramp and they wouldn't be able to sail far. Ow! The Sea King, with its mouth wide open, rudely bit towards the fishing boat where Qin Ming was, obviously intending to eat them along with the boat. As the Sea King's big mouth leaned closer and closer, Qin Ming smelled the foul smell emanating from its mouth and gradually fell into despair. Is it difficult for me to just end up like this? Rubber pistol. When Qin Ming was about to close his eyes and wait for death, he heard a very energetic voice. Most importantly, how could the person's shouting be so familiar? Qin Ming suddenly opened his eyes and saw a long arm flying over his head. With a loud bang, the huge Sea King was knocked away. Great, this guy looks very delicious. A young man with a straw hat and a small scar under his left eye jumped onto Qin Ming's fishing boat, stretched out his arm to grab the bow of the boat, and flew over. His eyes lit up as he looked at the Sea King that had been knocked unconscious by his beating. Monster, his arms are stretched out. The fat man's face turned green when he saw the boy wearing a straw hat. Wow, there are still many fish here, they all look very delicious. The young man wearing a straw hat soon discovered the fish Qin Ming and his companions had previously placed in the basket, and his saliva flowed all over the ground. Munchi D. Road flying. Qin Ming now doesn't know what his mood is, both excited and nervous. This character, whom he had only seen in comics and screens before, now appears in front of him vividly and even saves his life. How do you know my name? Did we know each other before? Upon hearing Qin Ming's words, Lu Fei turned around and said in confusion. But you will know that my name is not strange at all, because I am the man who wants to become the One Piece King, ha ha ha. Before Qin Ming could explain, Lu Fei burst into a hearty smile. His smile was very infectious, especially his confidence, which was natural without any pretense. Upon hearing Luffy's bold words, the chubby man, who was already quite stimulated, fainted on the spot. Now Qin Ming had nothing to say. He saw Lu Fei occasionally looking at the fish in the basket with a greedy expression on his face. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Why don't you come back to the village with us and let's treat you to a big meal, so that we can repay your life." Saving kindness. Really? That's great, my stomach was already hungry. Luffy had a joyful expression on his face. Speaking of this, he seemed to remember something and quickly ran to the side of the boat, exclaiming, "Where's my boat? Is that the one? It has drifted so far already." Qin Ming pointed to the lonely drifting small boat in the distant ocean and said to Lu Fei, "That's my boat." Lu Fei looked in the direction pointed by Qin Ming and immediately realized that the small boat drifting far away was his. Previously, Lu Fei was focused on rescuing people and did not park the ship properly. By the time he realized it, the ship had already drifted away with the current. "You come back quickly, don't you want to become the future Pirate King's ship?" Lu Fei stood by the fishing boat and shouted at the gradually drifting boat. Qin Ming looked at Lu Fei speechlessly. This guy is really a single-celled organism. This is troublesome. Without a boat, I won't be able to go out to sea. Lu Fei saw that he couldn't call the ship back and said in great distress, "If you don't mind, I can lend you this fishing boat." Qin Ming thought to himself that the future Pirate King would actually set sail on my fishing boat, which was quite impressive. "You're really a good person." Upon hearing Qin Ming's words, Lu Fei immediately smiled and said to him, "So, you're also a man, right? Come with me to sea and become a free pirate on the open sea." Feilu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good. Chapter 2. First Time Together. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Faced with Luffy's invitation, Qin Ming was stunned on the spot. Judging from the current situation, Luffy is still alone, probably not even encountering Sauron. If he really accepts Luffy's invitation, what kind of impact will it have on Luffy's future pirate group? At first, Qin Ming was overjoyed when he heard Lu Fei's words, but he quickly calmed down and recognized a fact that he was just an ordinary person. To put it bluntly, Qin Ming is now just a fifth scumbag in battle. Apart from being good at fishing, he can be said to have no special skills. If Qin Ming encounters an unknown pirate, even if he has the courage to fight, he will definitely be the one who is abused in the end. There's no way, when Qin Ming was on Earth before, he was born into a very ordinary family. After going to school, he became a very ordinary student. When he came out to work in society, he became an ordinary office worker. How can an ordinary person without any highlights come to the world of the Pirate King and fight against those fierce pirates? If joining Luffy's pirate group would only become a burden, then he wouldn't accept Luffy's invitation and would rather stay in this peaceful small village for a lifetime. Therefore, after pondering for a while, Qin Ming decided to refuse Luffy's invitation. No, I like this village, and I'm also used to fishing. If I become a pirate, it will trouble me. When Qin Ming said these words, it was somewhat against his heart. He didn't want to go out to sea with Lu Fei and experience that wonderful and exciting adventure together. After all, when Qin Ming used to watch One Piece, he also fantasized about becoming a member of the Luffy One Piece squad, supporting each other and singing along the way. Who wouldn't yearn for that kind of selfless trust between partners? But when fantasy becomes a reality, combined with his own actual situation, Qin Ming can only make rational choices that go against his heart. Who likes to be a burden on a team? Fishing. Lu Fei didn't seem to understand that Qin Ming was rejecting him. His eyes lit up and he excitedly pointed to the fish in the basket on the fishing boat, saying, "So, did you catch all those fish?" "Well, that's it." Qin Ming nodded. Although the fat man went fishing with him, he was only responsible for putting the fish he caught into the basket. "I did not misjudge anyone. You are really reliable. We will become partners in the future. Please take good care of us." Lu Fei chuckled and gave a brilliant smile to Qin Ming. "Take care of your sister, you bastard. Listen carefully to what I say." Qin Ming vaguely felt something was wrong. He suddenly remembered that the person who seemed to have been invited by Luffy to board the ship would not even care if you agreed or not. To put it bluntly, Luffy will insist that you board his pirate ship. Qin Ming was about to speak again when he heard a loud creaking sound. "I am embarrassed, truly worthy of being a foodie. Even the cries I make when I am hungry are so distinctive." Qin Ming looked silently at Lu Fei, who was clutching his stomach and showing a greedy expression. "Didn't you say you wanted to treat me to a big meal? Let's go quickly. After we're full, we'll set sail." Lu Fei saw Qin Ming still standing still, and quickly spoke out to urge him. Before he could finish, he asked, "By the way, what is the specialty of your village? It must be delicious meat." "I'm a mess, you've already asked and answered yourself, and you're asking me a fart." Qin Ming rolled his eyes and succinctly told Lu Fei that the specialty of his village was fish, and then he prepared to return. Glancing at the chubby man who had fainted, Qin Ming slapped him more than 10 times in a row, making his face swollen. As a result, the chubby man was completely unresponsive. Under the continuous urging of Lu Fei, Qin Ming had no choice but to row his own small fishing boat back. As he rowed, Qin Ming felt something was wrong. He rowed for Mao for over a minute, but the ship not only did not move forward, but also showed a tendency to retreat. Looking at the calm sea, it shouldn't be. Qin Ming thought to himself this way, and when he turned around, he saw Lu Fei standing on the other side of the boat, stretching his arm and grabbing the giant sea king floating on the sea surface, while rowing with the oar in his other hand. You shouldn't ask him to help row the boat, the more he helps, the busier he gets. At this moment, Qin Ming truly felt that Luffy was not only a foodie, but also a scammer. What are you doing? I want to take it back and use it as an ingredient for a banquet. It's definitely very delicious. Luffy chuckled and glanced at the Sea King being held by his long arm, almost leaving no drool. Is it possible for us to row the boat back when you're holding onto such a bulky Sea King? Qin Ming was almost driven crazy by Luffy's single cell, and the Sea King was more than 20 times larger than this fishing boat. How could this small boat be pulled? Is that right? I thought you were slacking off and didn't row hard. It seems like I made a mistake, ha ha ha. Luffy was completely unaware that he had made a mistake, and even after making it, he looked heartless, making Qin Ming tremble with fear. If I really went out to sea with him, I might have been tricked to death by him before I saw Sauron and the others. No, he will definitely kill me. A thought came to Qin Ming's mind. That's all we can do. Luffy muttered, then lowered the oars in his hand and extended his arms, tightly grasping the body of the Sea King. Qin Ming originally wanted to ask Luffy to give up the Sea King class, but before he could say anything, he saw Luffy grab the Sea King class, lift it high, and throw it forward with such force, throwing it forward. Due to the weight of the Sea King, when Luffy stood on the small fishing boat and lifted the Sea King, the boat shook violently and began to sink. When Luffy threw the Neptune out, because he was standing on the other side of the ship, the weight of the Neptune plus the force generated by Luffy's force caused the ship to tilt at about 90 degrees. In other words, the small fishing boat that Qin Ming and Luffy were on almost capsized, causing Qin Ming's heart to jump. What exactly do you want to do? This time Qin Ming is really crazy. As a normal human, sometimes he can't understand the thoughts of single-celled organisms. Take it back and eat it. Luffy pointed to the Sea King class that he had thrown in front of the fishing boat, looked at Qin Ming, and naturally said, "Waste is not good, don't you know? Nima, I see that you just want to eat that Sea King type of thing. Don't make yourself so noble." Qin Ming couldn't help but know the true thoughts of this foodie as he watched Luffy swallow his saliva fiercely. Knowing that he couldn't persuade Luffy to give up on Qin Ming, who was a Sea King, he had no choice but to let Luffy play around like this, constantly rowing desperately, hoping to quickly return to the village and invite Luffy to finish a big meal before sending away the pit god. There is no regret in seeing Luffy with one's own eyes. Qin Ming really thinks so. He wants to embark on an adventure with Luffy at sea. With his ordinary combat power, 10,000 lives are not enough to lose. Why did you invite me? Although Qin Ming had made up his mind not to go out to sea, he was still curious about why Luffy invited him. I think you're a great person and you know how to fish. In that case, I don't have to worry about not having enough meat to eat in the future. Luffy said very bluntly. Qin Ming was not surprised when he heard Luffy's words. With Luffy's single-cell foodie mentality, it was not uncommon for him to invite him when he saw that he was good at fishing. I also want to find another chef and musician, so that I can listen to music and eat delicious meat every day. That feeling must be wonderful. Luffy once again threw the Sea King class forward, and Qin Ming, who was gradually accustomed to the large swaying of this fishing boat, did not react excessively. If you have a chef, there's no need to come to me. The chef will solve your problem of eating meat. Qin Ming felt that in the future, Luffy would encounter Xiang Jishi, and he, who only knows how to fish, would appear even more unnecessary on the boat. It seems that deciding not to go out to sea with Luffy is a wise choice. As soon as Qin Ming's thought came to his mind, he heard Luffy paddling and saying, "I've thought it over carefully. If the chef could concentrate on making meat for me to eat, that would be great. In the future, you'll be the one responsible for the meat ingredients." Luffy seemed to get more and more excited as he spoke. His eyes were bright as he looked at Qin Ming and said, "I had a Sea King fish last time, and its meat was delicious. If only you could catch Sea King fish for me to eat frequently in the future." Qin Ming felt a chill in his heart when Luffy saw him. When he heard Lu Fei's words again, his paddling hand shook and he almost fell directly into the sea from the fishing boat. If I could hunt sea kings, would I still use you to save them? Qin Ming thought of the scene of himself fighting against the huge sea kings every day after going out to sea with Lu Fei, and he felt a chill all over his body, with a cold sweat streaming out of his forehead. Ah, I see land, is that your village? Luffy was very excited and threw the oar aside, then extended his arm and climbed onto the fishing boat's pole, looking ahead. Well, we're almost there. When Qin Ming said these words, he was also very happy and finally returned to the village safely. Okay, look at me throwing it into that village in one breath. After throwing it so many times, my stomach is really starving. Luffy quickly jumped off the pole, followed by extending his arms, grabbing the Sea King in front of him, lifting him high, standing on the boat, spinning in place for a few laps, and then forcefully throwing the Sea King out. Perhaps the force used by Luffy this time was quite strong, causing the hull to shake more violently, and the previously unconscious chubby man was finally shaken awake. The chubby man, who had just woken up, had not figured out what was going on before feeling a surge in his stomach. He quickly came to the side of the boat and vomited profusely. Qin Ming knew that 9 out of 10 the reason this chubby man was because the ship's body used to shake violently from time to time, causing him to feel seasick. Seeing that the Sea King was thrown by Luffy and flew over 100 meters away, landing heavily on the land, Qin Ming had not yet had time to marvel at Luffy's terrifying strength when he heard an unusually piercing click. Ha! What sound is this? Luffy, standing by the boat, said in confusion. Qin Ming followed the piercing scraping sound and saw that the ship's planks at Luffy's feet were broken. Not good, this ship is going to sink. As soon as Qin Ming shouted out these words, the bottom of the small fishing boat completely shattered, and in no time, the seawater overflowed. Why did the ship become like this? Lu Fei said with a shocked expression. It's all because you're throwing Sea Kings there when you're free. This ship can't withstand the pressure. Qin Ming saw more and more seawater seeping in and said urgently. In fact, Qin Ming was right. Previously, Luffy stood on the boat several times and threw the huge Sea King fish, and his feet were always stepping on the boat board with great force. Finally, when Luffy threw the Sea King fish for the last time, the small fishing boat that had followed Qin Ming for more than half a year could no longer withstand the heavy pressure brought by Luffy and shamefully sank. Since that's the case, why didn't you tell me earlier? Lu Fei's words left Qin Ming speechless. I had already told you to give up on that Sea King class, it was you who didn't listen. Qin Ming was about to criticize Lu Fei with righteous words when he heard him say, I can't swim. Seeing Luffy quickly sink into the sea, Qin Ming suddenly remembered that Luffy, as a demon fruits ability holder, was a real dry duck. Seeing the chubby man floating on the broken boat board on the sea surface, nothing would happen. Qin Ming shook his head, let out a sigh, and jumped into the sea. 3 things to do when reading. Read, collect, and reward. Chapter 3. When making a decision. You are listening at novelfull.audio. When Qin Ming finally brought Luffy, who was weak and half dead, and the chubby man who was soaked in the seawater back to the land, he was already exhausted and panting like a cow, with his lips turning white. It is obvious that Qin Ming was almost exhausted after rescuing Lu Fei and Fat Man. There was no way, when Luffy sank to the bottom of the sea, there was still over 100 meters away from the ground. Originally, this distance was not a big problem for Qin Ming, so he could travel back and forth a few times. But because Luffy, who was immersed in seawater, was completely powerless, Qin Ming was swimming with someone on his back, and with the resistance of the water, his burden could be imagined. The most important thing was that a Luffy was already enough to make Qin Ming struggle. As he swam towards the land with Luffy, he casually turned around and saw that the chubby man, who was originally supported by a wooden board floating on the sea, had also sunk into the sea. This chubby guy can be said to be Qin Ming's first friend after coming to the world of the Pirate King. Coupled with the help of the chubby guy's family, how could he refuse to save him now that he is in crisis? So Qin Ming gritted his teeth and flew back with the road, rescuing the fat man. In this way, Qin Ming grabbed the fat man with one hand and carried Lu Fei with the other, using all his strength to suckle and swimming desperately towards the shallow land. If it weren't for Qin Ming's heavy fishing in the past 6 months, his arm strength would have been much stronger than before, and his body would have been stronger. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to forcefully pull Luffy and Fatty back to land at the same time in the sea. However, this also made Qin Ming exhausted enough. After he rescued Lu Fei and Fat Man, his consciousness gradually fell into a coma and became unconscious. This is normal. Qin Ming is an ordinary person who can save 2 drowning people in one breath. It can be said that he has exceeded his own limit and will fall into a state of collapse and coma, which is also a natural thing. When Qin Ming regained consciousness, it was already evening and he heard the excitement outside. Looking around, Qin Ming knew that he had been carried back to his house. It was probably another group of people who went fishing at sea who found them unconscious on the beach and rescued them. Okay, we're having a banquet. Qin Ming just sat up in bed, shook his drowsy head a few times, and then heard a very loud and energetic voice. Immediately after, a person wearing a red sleeveless vest, a straw hat, and a bright smile burst into Qin Ming's room and said, "You did wake up. Come on, let's have a banquet. The main dish is the sea king fish we just caught this morning. Its meat is so delicious. Sleeping trough, you almost drowned this morning. Now you seem to be doing nothing and shouting about having a party. Your energy is really abundant and terrifying." Qin Ming looked silently at Lu Fei, who was full of energy. Compared to this foodie, he seemed a bit lethargic. As soon as his body moved, he felt pain all over his body, and Qin Ming knew it was muscle soreness caused by overwork. Qin Ming, who had planned to lie in bed for a while longer, was forcibly pulled by Luffy to attend the banquet. "We are going out to sea tomorrow, so we must have a great time today. The meat for this banquet is really amazing." Lu Fei held a piece of meat thicker than his thigh in one hand and kept stuffing it into his mouth, while talking to Qin Ming. Qin Ming, who was being pulled away by Lu Fei, wanted to make it clear that he wouldn't go to sea with him. However, at this moment, the chubby man ran over and knelt on the ground, holding Qin Ming's leg in pain and crying, "That's great. You're really still alive. When I saw your face, it looked like a dead person. I thought I was going to attend your funeral. Get lost." Qin Ming rudely said to the chubby man, seeing the village full of joy, with campfires intertwined and the villagers all smiling. Many people even danced around the campfire, and everyone looked very happy. But this chubby guy put on a mournful expression, which immediately extinguished Qin Ming's slightly better mood. Look at the extremely gloomy expression on the chubby guy's face, it's really a sight to behold. After seeing Qin Ming, the villagers greeted him with a smile, and a few young and beautiful girls blushed and invited Qin Ming to dance together, but he refused. It's not Qin Ming's affectation, but his head is still groggy now. He's worried about jumping and accidentally falling into that fire, which would be a tragedy. But there is one person who is very happy to dance, and that is Luffy. He was dancing with a group of girls and couldn't get enough of it. Then he started belly dancing with those girls, causing everyone around him to burst into laughter and enjoy themselves. Watching Luffy draw a personal face on his belly, he utilized the characteristics of his rubber body to make his belly round and even inserted 2 chopsticks into his nose, making him look extremely comical and ridiculous. He even hummed an unknown pirate song, making the villagers laugh uncontrollably. It has to be said that with Luffy present, this banquet is much more lively than before. In the past, Qin Ming also attended banquets held in the village. Although it was quite lively, there was never a time like now when almost all the village names enthusiastically participated, and even he was infected. Qin Ming watched Luffy's performance while eating and asked the fat man beside him, "Can't you swim? How could you still drown?" As a fisherman, Fatty naturally knows how to swim. However, when he saw Fatty's situation was critical at that time, Qin Ming didn't have time to think much and saved him first. Qin Ming was also the first time eating sea king meat, and he found it very delicious and tempting to eat. But soon, Qin Ming felt like he had no appetite for this delicious sea king meat. Because the fat man said that the reason he drowned at that time was because after vomiting, his head was dizzy. He accidentally took a few bites of seawater and found that there was vomit he had vomited in the sea before. So he was nauseous on the spot. After vomiting, he opened his mouth and exhaled heavily when a small wave hit him, sending back what he had just spat out on the sea. Tragically, he vomited again. When he vomited, his reaction was too intense, and he accidentally cramped his leg. Following him, he decisively drowned. Little did he know that his words had completely knocked Qin Ming out of his appetite. The fat man continued to recount his tragic experiences, almost not making Qin Ming vomit in disgust. In the end, Qin Ming couldn't bear it anymore and punched the fat man unconscious. I am so cruel to him, he is truly unbearable. Who can't bear it? Qin Ming looked at the chubby man who had been knocked unconscious by him, feeling relaxed all over and no longer feeling the same discomfort as before. Are you the one with the ability of devil's fruit? The village chief saw that Lu Fei had extended his arm to pick up the meat from a nearby plate, which caused the villagers to exclaim in surprise and couldn't help but ask. Yeah, I ate rubber fruits, I'm a rubber man. Lu Fei held the meat in both hands and kept stuffing it into his mouth. He also rudely extended his arms and snatched the meat from Qin Ming's hand. Originally, Qin Ming adjusted his mindset and wanted to taste the delicious sea king meat, but as soon as he opened his mouth, the meat in his hand disappeared. Your sister, you foodie, give me some restraint. You've eaten at least 2/3 of the meat of such a big sea king. Qin Ming picked up another piece of meat in displeasure, but before he could eat it, it flew into his mouth again. Now Qin Ming had no choice but to choose the food that Luffy was least interested in, such as vegetables, to fill his stomach. Speaking of which, there is also a demon fruit in our village. The elderly village chief looked at Qin Ming's side and turned to Lu Fei, who was desperately eating meat, and said, Do you want to invite him out to sea? Well, he is a very reliable person, I won't misread him. We get along very well. Luffy swallowed the meat in his mouth, and his neck was stretched wide as a result. Your name is Munchie D. Luffy. The village chief touched the long white beard. He had a slight hunchback, and the wrinkles on his face were so wrinkled that it could trap a fly. However, looking into Luffy's eyes, there was a hint of intimidating aura. What's wrong with my name? Lu Fei didn't notice any difference in the way the village chief looked at him before, and then asked, by the way, what is his name? Without waiting for the village chief to answer, Lu Fei stretched out his arm, grabbed a pole, and jumped in front of Qin Ming. Qin Ming, who was eating something, was startled by the sudden appearance of Lu Fei in front of him. He rudely sprayed Lu Fei with shredded vegetables on his face. What's your name? Luffy shook his head. As he shook his head, some vegetable residue stuck to his face flew onto the meat he was holding in his hand. Then he took a bite and said with bright eyes, after adding these things, the meat seems to have become better to eat. Upon hearing Luffy's words, Qin Ming's stomach began to swell again. He suppressed the urge to vomit Luffy and told him his name. Qin Ming. Lu Fei pondered for a moment and then said, Your name is really strange. Nima, your names are weird, they all stink and long. Qin Ming muttered to himself. Just as he was about to talk to Lu Fei about something, he heard the seemingly elderly village chief say, Qin Ming, come with me. I have something to tell you. Looking at the hunched back of the village chief, Qin Ming was puzzled, wondering what the village chief wanted from him. After following the village chief to a quiet and remote place, he said to Qin Ming, over a year ago, someone stored a demon fruit in our village. The person said that if they met the right person, they would send the demon fruit out. The village chief's words made Qin Ming's heart skip a beat. Could it be that the demon fruit was handed over to the village by the underworld king Lei Li, who happened to have saved the fat man a year ago? Or, a year ago, Lei Li came to the East China Sea just to deal with that demon fruit? For a moment, Qin Ming was full of thoughts. When he regained his senses, he heard the village chief say, "If you really want to go to sea with that person, I can give you the devil's fruit." The village chief looked at Qin Ming with a burning gaze and continued, "I can see that deep down in your heart, you are very eager to go on an adventure at sea." Speaking of which, the village chief's small eyes became even brighter, with a hint of heroism in his tone. The world is vast, and as a man, it is normal to yearn for that vast and mysterious sea. Besides, you don't belong here. If you go out to sea, perhaps you can really find what you want. Whether to go out to sea with that person is your freedom, and I won't force you. So, what is your answer? The village chief smiled slightly at the corner of his mouth, looking at Qin Ming as if he already knew how Qin Ming would choose. Feilu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good. Chapter 4 Sails Away. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After learning that the village chief was willing to hand over the devil's fruit to him, Qin Ming's heart fluctuated. After careful consideration, he finally decided to eat the devil's fruit. Previously, Qin Ming wanted to refuse Luffy's invitation mainly because of his own lack of strength, and going out with Luffy would only become a burden. But if Qin Ming eats the devil's fruit, his strength may not be greatly improved in the short term, but his future growth has great room for improvement. After all, the devil fruit exerts different powers according to the user's level of development. Qin Ming can be considered a very resilient person. He thought about eating this demonic fruit and practicing hard. As the saying goes, diligence can make up for weakness, but he didn't believe he would always be a scumbag. After the village chief took out the demon fruit, Qin Ming saw it for the first time, which was called the incarnation of the sea demon. "Let's eat it." The hunchbacked village chief smiled and handed the demon fruit to Qin Ming. What kind of ability does this demon fruit possess? In the darkness, Qin Ming took the demon fruit and felt that it was light and had no texture in his hand. The soft moonlight shone on the dark demon fruit, reflecting faint white light. "I'm not sure about the specifics, but the person who handed me the demon fruit said, this demon fruit is very special." The village chief coughed and said to Qin Ming, "A very special demon fruit. Just thinking about it, if this demon fruit was just an ordinary commodity, then the underworld king Raleigh wouldn't need to come to the East China Sea specifically to deal with this demon fruit." Qin Ming had already inquired from the village chief about the person who entrusted the demon fruit to the village for safekeeping. Based on the characteristics described by the village chief, it should be Raleigh himself. Taking a deep breath, Qin Ming finally bit fiercely at the devil's fruit. As soon as Qin Ming ate the flesh of the devil's fruit, he felt that the taste was too unpleasant. It was the most unpleasant thing he had ever eaten in history, making him feel nauseous. However, Qin Ming still suppressed his nausea and swallowed the devil's fruit. "What are you doing here?" Qin Ming had just taken a bite of the devil's fruit when he heard Luffy's voice. "Ha! Isn't this the devil's fruit? This kind of thing is very unpleasant. You don't need to hide and secretly eat it, I will definitely not compete with you." Luffy's interest immediately diminished and he saw the demonic fruit in Qin Ming's hand with a missing mouth. Qin Ming knew from Luffy's expression that this foodie might think he and the village chief were secretly hiding aside to eat good food, so he came over to take a look. "Did you eat this demon fruit?" Luffy took the demon fruit from Qin Ming's hand and was surprised, saying, "What's going on with this demon fruit? I can't feel its weight at all, it's different from what I used to eat. I also find it strange that after eating this demon fruit, there seems to be no change in my body." Qin Ming watched helplessly as Luffy threw the demon fruit back and forth, treating it like a toy. "I saw Luffy throw the demon fruit into the sky with one hand, and with the other hand, he stretched out and patted the demon fruit to the other side. When Luffy wanted to retrieve the demon fruit floating in mid-air, a strong wind blew by and the light and floating demon fruit flew away, quickly disappearing from everyone's sight. Sorry. Luffy stared blankly at the demonic fruit being blown further and further away by the wind in the dark night, and then said to Qin Ming. Nima, fortunately I took a bite of the devil fruit first. Otherwise, the devil fruit would definitely have been lost by this scammer. Qin Ming secretly felt relieved in his heart, but then remembered that after eating the devil's fruit, his body remained the same as before, without any change. This made him uneasy, probably because he had eaten fake devil's fruit. The devil fruit is divided into 3 types: Superman, animal, and nature. In theory, after eating the devil fruit, after a short period of time, one should be able to know what abilities they have gained. Qin Ming had eaten the devil's fruit for almost 5 minutes, but his body remained as usual, which made him feel very uncomfortable. Why do you look distressed? Now everyone is happily attending the banquet, so come and play too. As Lu Fei spoke, he grabbed Qin Ming and quickly ran towards the gathering place where the villagers were gathered. At this moment, the banquet was in full swing, lively, with various songs and laughter. Influenced by this joyful atmosphere, Qin Ming's originally somewhat depressed mood slightly improved. The village chief, who was not far away, looked towards Qin Ming and muttered to himself in a low voice, "Lei Li, you must have never thought that you gave me that demon fruit in less than 2 years, and I sent it out. Now is not our era anymore. The time we spent sailing the ocean together with Roger and the others seems to have happened yesterday." Speaking of which, the village chief's originally curved back suddenly became straight, giving him a strong aura. A pair of small eyes stared at Qin Ming and said, "Little guy, the demon fruit you're eating is the most special existence among the Superman demon fruits, called the growth fruit. How much power you can unleash from this fruit depends on yourself." After saying these words, the village chief returned to his hunched figure, propped up his crutch, and slowly walked back into his own house. The banquet held in the village lasted until after 3 a.m., and it was the first time Qin Ming had such a great time playing in this world. It can be said that with Luffy, the person who loves hosting banquets the most, everyone can't have a good time if they don't want to. After the banquet ended, Qin Ming didn't go back to his room and just lay on the ground with Lu Fei and others, sleeping. There were also a lot of scattered villagers sleeping on the ground, many of whom had happy and satisfied smiles on their faces, clearly having a great time playing at the banquet. Listening to the loud snoring of Lu Fei, who was sleeping soundly beside him, Qin Ming's heart gradually calmed down from the joy of the banquet. Sigh. Lying on the ground, Qin Ming sighed and looked at the crescent moon hanging high in the sky. He thought that after eating the devil's fruit, he could fly out to sea with Lu, but judging from the current situation, it still didn't work. After eating the devil's fruit, I didn't even know what my abilities were. In other words, Qin Ming just wanted to exercise and strengthen his demonic fruit ability, but he couldn't do it. To put it bluntly, Qin Ming can't even determine his goal of hard work now. How can he exercise the ability of devil fruit and become even stronger? Qin Ming was still thinking about something when Lu Fei, who was sleeping next to him, turned around and rudely placed his big foot on his stomach. Sleeping trough, this guy really sleeps poorly. As soon as Qin Ming's thought came to his mind, he felt a tightness all over his body, unable to move. Originally, Lu Fei tightly hugged Qin Ming with both hands and drooled in his sleep, saying, "Meat, don't run." Now Qin Ming is completely embarrassed. "I have a piece of grass. I don't know how much meat you ate tonight, but even in your dreams, you still want to eat it. I really don't know how your stomach grows. Is it because it's made of rubber that your stomach has good elasticity?" Qin Ming felt speechless. According to his estimation, during the banquet, Luffy at least ate no more than 100 kilograms of meat. However, this foodie was still not satisfied and even dreamed of eating meat, so he knelt down. The most important thing is, don't hold on so tightly and even stretch your arms. Those who don't know, they think we're just laying a foundation. Qin Ming felt extremely distressed. After entering the world of One Piece, the first person to have intimate physical contact with him was not a beautiful woman, but a foodie named Luffy. In this way, Qin Ming and Lu Fei embraced each other and slept. After an unknown amount of time, the sky had turned slightly white. Qin Ming stayed up all night, ignoring everything he wanted and embarking on an adventure with Lu Fei, while also worrying about his own lack of strength, which was exhausting. These two different ideas kept popping up in Qin Ming's mind, causing him to be constantly conflicted. As a man, I should feel refreshed quickly, do whatever I can, or pull me down if I can't, motherly. It's like something. Of course, Qin Ming knew this. If he were to do something else, he would be able to make a decision immediately. However, the decision he is making now can be said to completely change his future, which is an extremely important turning point on his life path. It is not uncommon for Qin Ming to hesitate in the face of such a situation. At this moment, Qin Ming's mood is similar to the feeling of filling out his college application after the college entrance examination on Earth in the past. It is confusing whether to choose and how to choose, which makes him want to go crazy. His grandmother's. Watching the sky gradually brighten up and the sun about to rise, Qin Ming's heart sank. I used to be an ordinary person, living an ordinary life. Can it be that after I come to the world of the One Piece, I will continue to live that kind of life as plain as boiling water? No, I want to make a change. Since I ran into Luffy and he even invited me to go out to sea, am I really a coward who doesn't even have the courage to go out? I ate the devil's fruit, and I am different from the past. Although I don't know what ability it is, I will definitely understand it in the future. Even if my current strength is not good, I can practice and work hard, just like fishing. At first, I didn't know anything, but now I have become an excellent fisherman. I will definitely do it. If I don't go out to sea, do I still want to become a village chief in this village? This is not what I want. Qin Ming's idea of following Lu Fei to sea became increasingly firm in his heart. The hesitant expression on his face was gradually replaced by perseverance. In his slightly dim eyes, there was a brilliance that had never been seen before, a gaze that only those who recognized their goals and courageously advanced would have. The chubby man who woke up to pee happened to pass by Qin Ming's side, and accidentally saw that Qin Ming's eyes were terrifyingly bright, which was very intimidating. He was so scared that he almost peed on the ground. I'll be obedient. He was hugged so tightly by the man wearing a straw hat, and he was so excited that he started to spring. It seems that I made the right decision to sleep with him separately before, otherwise I might have been poisoned by him. The fat man thought to himself and hurriedly ran away from Qin Ming. Half an hour later, Luffy also woke up, and many village names opened their eyes in a daze. It's already dawn, will you come with me? Lu Fei stretched lazily and casually put the straw hat on his head, asking Qin Ming next to him. Qin Ming smiled and nodded slightly. When Lu Fei saw it, he burst into laughter and said, I knew you wouldn't refuse me. You have already woken up. I have prepared a new boat for you, you can leave now. The village chief leaned on a cane and came to Qin Ming's side, speaking up. Thank you so much. You invited me to a big meal and even sent us on a boat. Lu Fei looked excited and said to the village chief. The village chief waved his hand and led Qin Ming and the others towards the direction of the seaside port. On the way, Qin Ming bid farewell to the villagers one by one, and some of them even begged Qin Ming to stay, but he smiled and refused. When the chubby guy learned that Qin Ming had decided to go out to sea with the man in the straw hat who seemed a bit neurotic and threatened to become the pirate king, he felt that Qin Ming must be crazy. Watching the chubby guy crying uncontrollably, Qin Ming initially wanted to give him a hug and say goodbye. Anyway, he has been getting along well with the chubby guy for over half a year, and they can be said to be very good friends. Now that he is going on a long trip to sea, he really can't bear to part with this chubby guy. Unexpectedly, when the chubby guy saw Qin Ming wanting to hold him, he quickly dodged and said with a strange expression, no need to hold him. You should be careful in the future. It's not as peaceful outside as here. If you're not careful, your life will be lost. I don't want to hear about your death so soon. Qin Ming didn't know that when he firmly believed in life, the fat man treated him like a fag. He saw the fat man speak very truthfully, with a hint of care in his words, and it was not in vain that he had put in a lot of effort to save someone before. After waving goodbye to the fat man and others, Qin Ming saw that Lu Fei had already boarded the small fishing boat. He was about to run over all the way when he saw an extended arm flying over. Qin Ming suddenly felt something was wrong in his heart. Before he could say anything, Lu Fei's extended arm caught him. Following Qin Ming, he flew up with a whoosh, and in the blink of an eye, he came to Lu Fei's side and boarded the fishing boat. However, after being caught by Lu Fei from a distance on the fishing boat, Qin Ming's body collided heavily with the pole of the boat when Lu Fei stopped, almost causing him to faint in pain. "Brothers, we have set sail." Qin Ming, who was half lying on the fishing boat, saw Lu Fei standing at the bow of the boat, looking up and lifting his arms, and shouted with great energy. He thought to himself, "Stinky guy, one day I will teach you a lesson. My waist hasn't been broken. I'm really lucky." 3 things to do when reading. Read, collect, and reward. Chapter 5. The First Opponent. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After embarking on a small fishing boat with Lu Fei, Qin Ming went from initial excitement to later calmness, followed by extreme boredom. Yes, it's very boring. For a whole of 20 days, Qin Ming stayed on a small fishing boat, facing the endless sea. Along the way, he did not see any other boats or islands, and apart from flying on the same boat as him, he never saw anyone again. Qin Ming is better than Lu Fei, and he has a little bit of navigation knowledge. At least in the first few days of his voyage, he was able to distinguish direction. But after a few days, Qin Ming couldn't figure out which direction the fishing boat was sailing in the wind. At first, Qin Ming was still thinking of rowing and sailing, but Lu Fei told him that there was no need for such trouble, just let the ship drift along with the current, as it would eventually encounter an island. After careful consideration, Qin Ming realized that what Lu Fei had said was very reasonable. They were indeed in a hurry this time, without even the most basic compass for navigation. They really set sail with a passion. The small fishing boat prepared by the village chief for Qin Ming and his team was similar to the fishing boat Qin Ming used in the past, but there was plenty of food and water prepared on this boat. Although Luffy has a large appetite, it is still enough for them to hold on for a period of time. Because of this, Qin Ming didn't have to fish and lived a leisurely life on a small fishing boat. And to Qin Ming's surprise, there was actually a large treasure chest on this small fishing boat. He had seen what was inside the chest, which was so shiny with gold that it could almost blind people's eyes. When Luffy saw the treasures in the treasure chest, his eyes lit up and he said he wanted to exchange them for a huge bronze statue of a human body. Qin Ming was speechless about Lu Fei's foolish behavior of willing to exchange gold for copper blocks. Although the fishing boat is small, it is more than enough to accommodate 2 people. However, staying in this extremely limited activity space for a long time with nothing to do can really drive people crazy. Qin Ming, who had never had the experience of sailing before, now truly experienced the loneliness and solitude of sailing. It was unbelievable that Qin Ming could bear the loneliness of Lu Fei, who used to sail alone on a small boat at sea before. After enduring several days, in order to find something to do for himself, Qin Ming worked tirelessly on the boat, practicing day and night until he was exhausted. He slept as soon as he lay down, and continued to practice the next day when he woke up. It can be said that during these 16 days, Qin Ming spent the rest of his time desperately exercising, except for meeting the needs of daily life. In order to prevent Lu Fei from disturbing him, Qin Ming specifically found something to do for Lu Fei, which was to let the ship sway as much as possible without capsizing. The reason for doing this is because Qin Ming found that practicing the horse stance on a swaying boat is more effective than standing on stable land. Okay, watch my fishing net go berserk. Lu Fei excitedly took the fishing net given to him by Qin Ming and fished into the sea. Then, standing beside the fishing boat, his body spun rapidly, and the fishing net in his hand also moved. As Luffy's body spun faster and faster, the speed of the fishing net sliding in the sea also increased exponentially. In no time, the dozens of wooden buckets filled with food that Luffy had thrown into the seawater before were caught by the fishing net in his hand. The dozens of heavy wooden barrels were caught by the fishing net, causing greater resistance for the net to slide on the sea surface. In addition, Luffy's body spun rapidly, constantly dragging dozens of wooden barrels around the small fishing boat with the fishing net. After a moment, a small vortex was actually created. The fishing boat caught up in the small vortex shook violently, which was exactly what Qin Ming wanted. He wanted to exercise his body in this environment. Qin Ming, who was stumbling on the violently swaying small fishing boat, remembered how Luffy had watched him throw buckets of food into the sea before and asked him if it was good weather to take out the food and sun it on the sea, which made him feel quite amused. When Lu Fei saw the wooden barrels filled with food starting to sink into the sea, he ignored everything and wanted to jump into the sea to catch those barrels, leaving Qin Ming speechless. This guy really didn't even want his life for food. Qin Ming handed the fishing net to Lu Fei and asked him to catch those wooden barrels. As expected by Qin Ming, Lu Fei enthusiastically started the work of salvaging wooden barrels. After all, those barrels were filled with meat that he liked to eat. This is also the reason why Qin Ming would throw the wooden bucket full of food into the sea. Only in this way can Lu Fei be busy retrieving the bucket and no longer have any idle troubles, which would make it difficult for him to exercise. He can also help him create the environment he needs for exercise. Why not do it? In this way, Qin Ming threw dozens of wooden buckets filled with food into the sea every day, and then had Lu Fei use a fishing net to catch them. What left Qin Ming speechless the most was that Luffy seemed to be addicted to playing. On their 10th day at sea, this guy took the initiative to throw the wooden barrels containing food into the sea, and then played the game of fishing nets and buckets. He had a great time playing and helped Qin Ming create a small vortex to exercise. After 16 days of tireless training day and night, Qin Ming clearly felt that his body had become much stronger and his strength had increased significantly. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to throw dozens of barrels of food into the sea without even taking a breath. Despite the muscle soreness and fatigue after daily hard training, Qin Ming was still able to endure the fatigue and continue high-intensity training the next day when he woke up. From initially insisting on 70 consecutive push-ups, 300 standing frog jumps, and 1.5 hours of horse training every day, to now doubling the training intensity, Qin Ming has gradually adapted to this crazy to almost self-destructive exercise method in just half a month. During this period, Qin Ming was so tired that he didn't even have the strength to eat. As a result, Lu Fei grabbed a lot of meat and forcefully poured it on him, almost not choking him to death. Lu Fei watched Qin Ming exercise tirelessly every day, and he didn't say anything. Sometimes, when he saw Qin Ming sweating profusely and his clothes soaked in sweat, he would laugh foolishly. It can be said that in these 10 or so days, as long as Qin Ming has been exercising, Lu Fei has been playing the game of fishing nets and wooden barrels for as long as possible. But this also affects the speed of navigation. The small vortex created by Luffy can enhance the effect of Qin Ming's exercise, but the speed of fishing boats will be greatly affected. However, neither Lu Fei nor Qin Ming was in charge of the boat and allowed it to drift with the wind. It can be said that every night when Qin Ming and Lu Fei fell asleep on the boat, their ship's sailing speed was actually faster than during the day. A few days after going out to sea, Qin Ming was still struggling with what kind of ability he gained after eating the devil's fruit. However, no matter how much he tried, he was still confused about that unknown ability. In the end, he decided not to think about it and focused all his energy on cultivation. Okay, let's finish playing here today. Lu Fei saw Qin Ming sitting paralyzed on the fishing boat, panting heavily and not taking any more steps. He shouted with great spirit, wanting to catch the wooden barrels that were caught in the fishing net. Just as Lu Fei was lifting the fishing net containing dozens of wooden barrels, suddenly a big fish rushed out of the sea and swallowed the fishing net in his hand along with the wooden barrel filled with food in one bite. With a splash, the big fish quickly plunged into the sea after eating and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Looking at the broken fishing net in his hand, not only was Lu Fei dumbfounded, but even Qin Ming sitting on the ground was stunned. "Hey, give me my meat back quickly. I'm a man who wants to become the One Piece King. Take something from me. You've already made up your mind." Lu Fei, who had reacted, threw away the tattered fishing net in his hand and came to the side of the boat. He stepped on the pole and shouted with great momentum towards the direction where the big fish had disappeared. Unfortunately, the big fish had already burrowed into the sea and was nowhere to be found. Even though Luffy was shouting and screaming there, the sea remained calm. Qin Ming dragged his exhausted body to Lu Fei's side, intending to offer a few words of advice. However, when he saw Lu Fei's serious expression, no longer the usual cheerful expression, and a hint of brilliance in his eyes, he couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. "Do you have a way to catch the big fish that robbed us of our property just now?" Luffy stared at the sea with both eyes, his face solemn, and continued, "We are pirates. How can we watch our belongings be taken away and do nothing? Even if our opponent is a fish, I will do my best." At this point, Luffy looked at Qin Ming and said excitedly, "And it also ate all the meat I really like in one bite. Even I can't bear to eat all that meat at once. I will never forgive that fish." After listening to Lu Fei's words, Qin Ming felt very embarrassed. "Your last words were the key, and daring was just a prelude." The dozens of barrels of meat were eaten by the big fish, and there was not much meat left on the ship. Based on Luffy's appetite, he estimated that he could only eat for about 4 or 5 more days. Qin Ming was about to respond when he saw something flying out of the sea not far away. Upon closer inspection, the big fish that flew out of the sea was the one who had snatched their food not long ago. When the big fish returned to the sea, it even waved its blue tail fins, emitting laughter similar to human ridicule, as if disdaining Lu Fei and Qin Ming. "Ah! It dares to come back and provoke us, I want to beat it up." The single-celled Luffy was soon made to want to have a showdown with the big fish. This is the Guxiao fish, they can make a mocking sound similar to humans, and it's also the first time I've seen this kind of fish. Qin Ming touched his chin with a thoughtful expression and said to Lu Fei beside him. This Guxiao fish was described in an ocean book by Qin Ming when he was learning some fishing techniques before. If this type of fish reaches adulthood and has a sea blue color all over, no scales, and a body length of 15 to 20 meters, its bulging gills can make a mocking sound similar to humans. Its favorite is to tease the fishermen, and it can be said that many fishermen find this funny fish a headache. I should be able to catch it, but it will take some effort. 20 days ago, Qin Ming had no confidence to say such things. He had just finished his exercise and his clothes around him were as wet as if they had been soaked in water. He shook his slightly sore arm, and surprisingly, many water stains flew out of his sleeves, indicating how much sweat he had accumulated from his previous exercise. "Then hurry up and take action. I've never eaten this kind of fish before. If its meat tastes good, then I'll forgive it, ha ha ha." Lu Fei's unintentional words made Qin Ming very upset. "You've used it to fill your stomach, so forgiving it would be useless. Even a mere fish has the courage to trouble us. Don't they know that we're on a pirate ship? Maybe we didn't hang the pirate flag, making them think we're all fishermen." Qin Ming found 2 spare fishing nets from the fishing boat and chuckled, thinking to himself. I didn't expect my first opponent at sea to be a non-human. There could be surprises in this sea at any time. Feilu's novel, Fei Wants You to Look Good.